Gaslighting is a term thrown around a lot, but nobody is gaslighting you more than the government. The government is gaslighting you into believing that life getting 2% more expensive every year is required for a high-functioning economy. They tell you 2% inflation is needed for your economic well-being. Why would life get more expensive if we are getting better at making things? How could life becoming more expensive be a good thing? Governments and their co-opted central banks trick you into believing inflation is necessary because they have an incentive to. Wake up. If you believe that government money printing is necessary, that means the government gets to keep their money printer. As long as the government has their money printer, they can print money to pay for their endless deficit spending, they can print money to enrich themselves and their bribing lobbyists, and they can print money to steal your purchasing power from you. If the government were to print $50 quintillion tomorrow, today's money would be worthless, but whoever received the new 50 quintillion would be spared. Where does the government's newly printed money actually go in reality? In the United States, for every $100 the Federal Reserve creates, $56 goes to the top 1%, while 60 cents goes to the bottom 50%. The top 1% of the country receives 93 times more of the new money than the bottom 50%. That explains the growing wealth gap. Please understand, there is an entity in the world right now that has $34 trillion of debt, with that number climbing every second, and that entity still survives. How does any business, entity, corporation, company, or government survive with $34 trillion of debt? Because they have a money printer. The debt does not matter to them. There might as well be no debt. That's why the US government's debt ceiling has been raised 78 times since 1960. Ever think of how the government and media made a fuss about reaching the debt ceiling in 2023, only to raise it once again? This time, they left it entirely uncapped. There is currently no debt ceiling. They signed this into motion with a bill called the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. The debt is not real. The government spends and prints money to pay for it. It doesn't matter how much debt they take on, they simply print the difference. There is no care for financial responsibility. Do you understand that when the government prints new money, they are counterfeiting the current money and declaring it valid? The government, and only the government, can engage in legal counterfeiting. They get free money. You get to face the consequences. This is why they must convince you inflation is necessary. Without inflation, the government can't spend with no regard for budgets, and they can't enrich themselves and all of their close buddies. Without inflation, they don't get to finance endless wars and the perpetual killing of humans so they can pay off their warlord lobbyists who pay off the government to receive the financing. They need you to believe inflation is necessary so you won't shut down their money printer. Think about it. The government drafts and signs a fiscal budget each year. Since 2001, the US government has ended in a spending deficit every single year. Not once has the government fallen within their budget. They create a budget, spend past it anyway, and print money to cover it. There might as well not be a budget. The money you are using is fake. You are being gaslit. Ever heard of legal tender laws? That's the tactic the government uses to mandate the use of their money by threatening fines and jail time if you don't. This ensures that the government's money has to be used, while nothing else can be used. The US dollar, by law, is the only money allowed to be used in the country to settle debts and taxes. This was enacted in 1862 and finalized in 1913 through the Federal Reserve Act, which created the United States Central Bank. What a coincidence! If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail, which ultimately coerces you into using the US dollar. The government grants themselves a monopoly over money, threatens you to use it, steals from you by inflating the money supply, enriches themselves, and then tries to tell you all of it is required for the economy to function properly. You are being gaslit. Every single day, every time you use the government's money, their money is make-believe paper and numbers on a screen. You do understand that when you make a deposit at your bank, they just type in the numbers on a computer to credit you with the money, then loan that same deposit out to somebody else, right? You do understand that all banks in the United States have a deposit reserve requirement amount of 0%, right? Meaning they're required to keep 0% of your deposit in their reserves. Directly from the Federal Reserve, effective March 26, 2020, the board reduced reserve requirement ratios on all net transaction accounts to 0%, eliminating reserve requirements for all depository institutions. Your money is fake. You are being gaslit by the government into believing it is real. You are being gaslit by the government into believing that $34 trillion of debt doesn't matter. You are being gaslit by the government into believing that inflation is a good thing. All so they can keep their precious money printer. Oh, and actual inflation isn't 2%. That's a lie, too. In 1959, there were $289 billion in circulation. In July of 2023, there were $20,902 billion in circulation, which is a 7,127% increase in the supply of money. That's an average annual inflation rate of 6.92%. The founding fathers of America would be disgusted with the current governmental state of affairs. We cannot be freed unless the money is freed. We cannot find freedom unless money finds freedom. We must take the money out of the hands of the government and give it back to the people. We must decentralize money. That is not a problem anymore. The solution is here. All that remains is understanding. Money has been decentralized. Hello, Bitcoin. Learn about Bitcoin to understand the solution to this madness is right in front of you.